Okay, welcome to my third video. In this one I'm going to be talking about some ideas for an out week or an orientation week. I'll just start off by saying that this is something that I really love the idea of. I think this is a great opportunity to help students bond and get to know each other better, but also give them a bit of a taste to the outdoors and kind of what our outdoor ed program is going to be like throughout the various years that they are at West Point Grey Academy. I'll start off by saying that we do something quite similar here at Lakefield College School, where part of the orientation week is focused on the outdoors, but part of it is also focused on giving back to community and also connecting to the local community around the school as well. So kind of the ideas that I've developed for this out week for West Point Grey Academy would be quite similar. So that one component would be outdoor related, and then part of it would also be about connecting to the community. And we could also tie Indigenous ways of knowing into it as well as an option. So what I've kind of devised, just a kind of my notes, a small outline for what I would like to see, or some sort of idea for what could work for an out week. Would involve grades 9 to 12. I've done grade 9 to 12, but we could also expand that to include younger grades as well. So the way I would like to design it is that it is a progression, so that it's every single year you are moving up to a more difficult trip, or you're doing more challenging activities, both academically and kind of intellectually, but also in terms of physical skills and knowledge in the outdoors. So with that being said, for the grade 9s, I would ideally like to have it where they do a couple of different day trips each day throughout the week, rather than one long expedition or one long stint at like an outdoor education center. So the way that it would work for the grade 9s would be ideally some sort of team bonding activity on the first day of the week. So that could be something even on site, although we could take that elsewhere. We could take it to a local park, or Kitsilano Beach is an option, or even a provincial park nearby. That could work for some team bonding activities. So things that I had in mind for that would be like an orienteering course setup, or a scavenger hunt that we set for the kids, then followed by some ABL, some adventure-based activities where they could do team building and trust activities. Following that, they might also just have some sports or some activities like beach volleyball, some activities that just get them moving and get them having fun together. We could also have arts and crafts going on and other activities kind of centered in one location. For the second day would be a trip to a local camp, or I was thinking treetop trekking could work quite well. This is something that we've done at both my previous two schools, so at Aotea College in New Zealand and then also at Lakefield. We have done a treetop trekking day where the students go out to a local facility, and that would be a day of kind of more risk-taking, but also in a healthy way and a safe way. So that would be day 2. Day 3 could be a trip to a provincial park, or even just to Cypress or Grouse Mountain, to a bit of a day hike type of activity with some other fun activities mixed in along the way. And then the last day would be some sort of community outreach or charitable kind of work that the students would take part in. So at Lakefield College School, what we do is we do a lot of work with Big Brothers Big Sisters Peterborough. So what we did this past year was a bike drive where we helped fix up old bikes that had been donated, and then we delivered them and helped give them back to the community for those in need. That's one option that we could do. We could also do a fundraiser, bake sale. Car wash would be more engaging probably, but some sort of charitable work with a local organization that we could give back to the community around us. So that's kind of my general outline. Obviously the details could be worked, and obviously depending on our budget that we have, that would have to alter or change some of those details, but that's the general setup that I would like. For grade 10s, it would then be another step up, so trying not to replicate the same activities that they did the year before, although some that are quite popular could be utilized. So if this was to be a system that we keep in place for multiple years, ideally we would want to have different activities each year. But one that I'm thinking of, again, treetop trekking could be a day that both the 9s and 10s go together, maybe in separate groups or to separate locations to do some treetop trekking, but I think that would be a really valuable, really memorable experience for them. Again, participating in some sort of fundraiser or local event, but this time have them co-construct it a little bit more, so have some student leaders or have the students take one day, maybe on the first day after they've done some team building activities, to help plan out what that fundraising event might look for. What are some charities that they might want to donate the money to, and what are some ideas that they might have for a charity event? I was also thinking that maybe a trip to a local Indigenous center or a museum of some sort to learn more about the history of the area, as well as just the cultures surrounding West Point Grey Academy, could be really valuable to grade 10 students as they go into their senior years of outdoor education. And then a one-night overnight camping trip is kind of the last stage of that progression. So this is where it kind kind of gets a little bit more challenging than the grade 9 trip. They would have to engage in a camping trip of some sort. So that could be probably the easiest thing would be just to book some group campsites at a provincial park locally, like Golden Ears Provincial Park. But we could do something closer to the school as well if that would work better with our budget. But essentially have students working together to cook meals, to camp, to have some campfires, sing some songs, do some activities together, and spend one night overnight together as kind of the culminating activity for their trip. Moving forward now onto grade 11s. For the grade 11s, I would propose that they do some sort of, it could either look two different ways. They could either do a half expedition trip where they either go paddling for a certain amount of time or hiking for a certain amount of time, as well as a stay at an overnight camp. I think that could be very valuable, especially with some of the resources that are around the city. I worked for Sasamat Outdoor Ed Center a few years ago, and there's a lot of great resources there. They also have cabins on site where the students could stay. So my structure for that trip, if we were able to book out a facility like Sasamat, would be to have the students go for 3 or 4 days and have each day be centered around different activities. So the first day could, again, just be something fun, team building. They could do activities like archery and high ropes, taking some risks, doing some trust activities there, maybe some paddling, canoeing, kayaking as well. They could also do a little bit of first aid. That could be an option. I don't know how educational we want to make this trip, but having a first aid course run over 2 of those days, in addition to some of the other activities that they're doing, could be an option as well. There are some really skilled facilitators there that might be able to run a course for at least some of the kids and then maybe swap groups for the next day. That could be an option as well. And alternatively, we could also do more of a leadership focus on it, and that would be something that I would like to see involved as well if we aren't able to do a first aid or outdoor safety component to that trip. Then doing some leadership training, having some sessions on what makes a good leader, what do we want our senior students to be able to do, to say, to look like as role models at West Point Grey Academy. So this could be some time for them to reflect and plan for their year in terms of how are they going to be leaders for the junior students. And then finally, kind of the culminating activity for this trip for the grade 11s would be to do a one-night expedition trip of some sort. So that could either be a hike, that could be a paddle. It would obviously depend on where we were located out of. Hypothetically, if we were at Sasamat, a great place to do it would just be up the Indian Arm, which is right there in Belcarra Park already. And the camp does those trips over the summer anyways, so it would be a great option just up the road. They would help facilitate that. Do a one-night paddle up the Arm, camp for the night, and then come on back to wrap everything up the following day. So again, these are some loose plans. Obviously, this would be dialed in and a little bit more detailed should we go ahead with this, but this is kind of how I would like the progression to move along. Finally, for the grade 12s, I would hope that the grade 12s would have some time ahead of a week to do some planning in terms of leadership and how they want their year to go as senior leaders. But then for their culminating activity or their kind of big expedition trip that I would like them to do would be some sort of backpacking or paddling trip. That could look like a sea kayaking trip, although I'm not sure how feasible that would be, especially with budgets. One idea that I have come up with that I think could actually work quite well is a backpacking trip through Garibaldi Provincial Park. I've done this myself, and we also, again, did it through Sasamat as an option for some of our senior leaders that were there over the summer. So having different groups split up, so splitting up our grade 12s into a few different sections, and having one hike in from the Cheakamus side up the Cheakamus River entrance, and then having another group enter from the Garibaldi Rubble Creek side. There are quite, if we booked it out in advance, obviously the campsites there are able to house quite a few tents, so coming in with a fairly sizable group would be okay, would be an option that we could do. And then they would both hike over kind of the pass past Black Tusk and meeting each other at kind of lunch, hopefully on the second day. They could have kind of a big reunion, which would be quite fun, and then continue past one another and out the opposite exits. So again, I don't know exactly what our rules and regulations would be around doing a trip like this. It may not be possible. We may be able to do even more than what I'm imagining. But having some sort of expedition trip where we get all of the grade 12s out together, doing something that is challenging, that is in the outdoors, where they get to be together, where they, maybe even if they're not all traveling together, which is obviously not something that's super doable in the outdoors, at least they get to see each other on one day and kind of have that special moment together. That's something that we do here at Lakefield that I really, really enjoyed. We do a big canoe camping trip with multiple groups that are all paddling around Algonquin Park and connecting on different days, and it works really, really well. So this is kind of an idea to try to replicate that, but I'm sure that we can kind of fine-tune it and come up with a plan that really, really works, that will create a lasting, memorable experience for those grade 12 students. So those are my general ideas for how an out week could work for senior school. Again, ideally I'd like it to be a progression with some community give back, providing some sort of support for the community as well, but also giving our students that just really powerful, lasting impression, and also obviously a positive experience in the outdoors is key. So thank you very much, and I really appreciate you taking the time to listen and hear out my ideas, and looking forward to chatting further in the future. Thanks so much.